With the solar With the solar milk batteries, my friends go to school where the solar cow waits for them. They plug their batteries into the solar cow. While they wait for the solar cow to charge the batteries, they can take classes and also have fun with their friends. After school, they can go home with fully charged batteries to power lights and cell phones. Thanks to Solar Cow, the house is now bright at night. Also, they no longer need to go to charging shops far from home. The solar milk batteries provide incentive for parents to send their kids to school.
I've never known a love so steady.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pre-P4G Summit event on inclusive green partnership. My name is Jo Jin-kyung, and I've been given the honor to moderate today's event. Today's event is being held ahead of the upcoming 2021 P4G Seoul Summit, hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and co-organized by the Green Technology Center and ASEM SME's Eco-Innovation Center in support of the P4G Preparatory Office. This pre-summit event will begin with an opening session and keynote session, followed by the panel discussions and presentations. Finally, the 2021 P4G Partnership Call procedure will be presented with the Q&A session. Then, without further ado, let us now begin the opening ceremony. I would like to invite up to the stage Vice Minister Choi Jong-moon from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Dr. Lee Hwae-sung, Chair of the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So let me begin by welcoming you to this Pre-P4G Summit event on the theme of inclusive green partnership. I would also like to express my appreciation to all the distinguished speakers, moderators, panels, and participants for their contribution to today's event. Certainly, COVID-19 has been a challenge for all of us, but it has also taught us important lessons, one of which is that everyone is interconnected, that we cannot overcome global challenges alone. As in the case of COVID-19, climate change is indeed a pressing issue that requires concerted efforts by all. Another is that despite the current COVID-19 crisis we face, there are opportunities for us to build back better and greener. By pursuing a green recovery, we will certainly be able to rebuild our economy and achieve long-term climate goals. 2021 is a critical year for the international community's endeavors to tackle climate change, since it marks the start of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Korea has been engaging in dedicated efforts in this vein. Last July, Korea announced the Korean New Deal, a stimulus package based on two main policies, the Digital New Deal and the Green New Deal, to support the country's recovery from the pandemic crisis. Korea also set ambitious long-term goals by announcing the carbon neutrality by 2050. As we continue to tirelessly work with the international community to achieve the global goals, however, we are realizing that existing efforts made by the government and the UN system will not be enough. We need more actors, more innovative ideas, and more concrete results that will have an impact on the ground. This is why Korea is actively participating in the P4G, Partnering for Green Growth and the Global Goals 2030 initiative. P4G is a global delivery mechanism launched in 2017 during the UN General Assembly to accelerate our actions for climate change, seeking to achieve the SDGs through public-private partnerships, uniting governments, businesses, and civil societies. Korea will host the 2021 P4G Summit in Seoul on May 30th to 31st under the theme of inclusive green recovery towards carbon neutrality. The P4G Seoul Summit will be a timely opportunity to bring together global efforts on greening our recovery while pursuing carbon neutrality. We are expecting leaders from various countries and organizations to join us at the summit. Prior to the summit, the Green Future Week will kick off to raise public awareness of P4G. There will be 10 special sessions on a range of issues throughout the week, such as green technology, green finance, and oceans and the future generation. During the summit, there will be 5 thematic sessions focusing on 5 goals of the SDGs: water, energy, the circular economy, cities, and food and agriculture. I trust that the series of events will indeed serve as a stepping stone for the success of the P4G Seoul Summit. This Pre-P4G Summit event is designed to provide us with a venue to explore inclusive green partnership together. Indeed, this is an important element of the P4G and the upcoming 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. There will also be an opportunity to apply for the ongoing 2021 call for partnership, which will be presented later this afternoon. I'm confident that today's discussions and presentations will help us to gain a deep understanding of what partnerships are and how we can more fully nurture them. Finally, let me thank the Global Technology Center, ASEM Eco Innovation Center, 2024-2021 P4G Summit Preparatory Office, and all my colleagues for their cooperation. So your great work has been instrumental in making this event possible and ensuring its success. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister, for helping us kick off this very momentous event. Now we will invite Chairman Lee Hwae-sung from the IPCC. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lee up to the stage.
Excellency Vice Minister Choi and distinguished participants. I'm very pleased to be here to greet you on behalf of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for this Pre-P4G Summit event. A few days ago, I happened to watch from one of the global news channels a commentator proclaiming that we live in an age of promise. Many countries were declaring the net zero, the 2050 goals, but in his view, apparently, with little indication of how they would be achieved, and therefore, his concluding remark was those are a series of empty promises. It seemed that such a view was not alone. While there is merit to such criticism, which I think a healthy one, but there is a bigger picture that I believe one should not miss in living the age of promise, whether or not you agree to this definition of our age regarding the goal of climate stabilization. I would like to say that national promise is important and meaningful, especially for achieving global stabilization, climate stabilization. It would be more so if the promise is about the goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Every country has to reduce carbon emissions to help the world to achieve global carbon neutrality by 2050 for limiting global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The emissions of carbon dioxide increase the global temperatures regardless of where it was emitted, who emitted it, and how little its quantity would have been. Every activity results in CO2 emissions. I use transportation to get here, resulting in the CO2 emissions. I'm here in this conference room, which works only with electricity, which emits CO2. In fact, our entire infrastructure is a platform for emitting CO2. Every day, I move and work, adding to the cumulative emissions in the atmosphere, which will cause temperature rise, which will worsen extreme weather patterns, water shortage, food security, human health, involuntary migration, loss of ecosystem services, biodiversity loss, and species extinction, and the risk of potential crossing the threshold of irreversible changes in the Earth system. The accelerating climate change is eroding the very foundation of our life and livelihoods. To be more precise, my life, my livelihoods, and your life and your livelihoods. I'm only one of 7.9 billion people living in this world, but I am causing these terrible damages to ourselves. And there are the rest of the population who also cause damages to themselves and myself through their emissions of CO2. Therefore, I'm both the victim of climate change and its cause. Climate change is a self-inflicted injury, compounded by cumulative injuries inflicted by all our neighbors on this planet. Our business usual and habitual way of living is undermining the very foundation of our life support system and attacking our health, lives, and livelihoods. It is quite appalling to see that we let this self-destruction and mutual self-inflection continue for this long. We often see banners exhorting, "Save the planet." I wholeheartedly support it, but believe at the same time it looks distanced, leisurely, and luxurious. The banner should read, may I say, "Help me, help us." Mutual destruction would stop if all emitters in the world stop emitting CO2. This requires global agreements for action, regulation, and institutions. You can imagine the challenges of these global joint actions at a global scale if you knew already the challenges the policymakers face for any action within their national boundaries. How tough the work would be to go beyond the national boundaries and for the entire global community becomes quite obvious. And therefore, the promise of net zero 2050 is significant. It is an excellent first step toward joint action and pursuing the inclusive green partnerships, the key theme of this Pre-P4G summit event, is a step in the right direction to a net zero journey. There is a saying that well begun is half done. We have all observed that responses to COVID-19 are science-based. So are responses to climate change. The goal of net zero 2050 is science-based. And it is the IPCC that provided the scientific base for the rationale of net zero and its pathway. The net zero pathway will also be a path to a new, clean, transformative economic development befitting the 21st century. This parallel between the net zero and new economic development is also science-based, and IPCC is behind it. In approaching this net zero new economic development pathways, I imagine there will be three groups of countries in the world: leaders, followers, and the indifferent. In the last century, of economic development, Korea was a follower. I would like to ask Korea, the convener of P4G summit, what do you want to be in this century, the century of carbon neutrality and new economic development? And indeed, I would also like to ask every country in this world the same question. What do you want to be in this century? A century of great transformation for sustainable development and clean economic development, as well as climate stabilization. I'm sure that P4G summit will provide the answer. As a result, I imagine that TV commentator will proclaim, "We will live in an age of deliverance." I wish you all a very productive meeting today. Again, I'm very happy to be here to send you a good wishes from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your insightful remarks, Dr. Lee. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be diving right into the keynote session. Today, we have two keynote speakers, Ambassador for Climate Change and Deputy Minister Yoo Yeon-chul, who is also the Executive Director of the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Preparatory Office, and Mr. Ian De Cruz, Global Director of the P4G Hub. Our first speaker, Ambassador Yoo, will be talking about the upcoming 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Yoo up to the stage.
Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished the participants. I'm honored to be a part of this event and taking this opportunity. So I'd like to give you a brief account of P4G in general and the P4G Seoul Summit in particular. Because some of you are well aware of P4G concept, but others are not familiar with the P4G initiative. The P4G stands for the Partnering for Green Growth and the Global Goals 2030. And the purpose of P4G is to address climate change and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And the methodology of P4G is the PPP, the public-private partnerships. And the origin of P4G dates back to 2011, when Denmark, they established the 3GF, the Global Green Growth Forum. And building on 3GF, the P4G was launched in 2017 on the occasion of the United Nations. The Korea has placed higher value on P4G. This is because the P4G is composed of government and the business sectors and the civil society. P4G brings these three stakeholders all together in one place to address climate change. And P4G is expected to take a holistic approach for addressing the climate change, achieving the sustainable development. And also, P4G is handling the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, with particular emphasis on the 5 main topics, such as the food and agriculture, water, energy, cities, and circular economy. I mean, the food and water, energy are critical to our life, and we consider them as security issues, such as food security and water security and energy security. And without solving serious problems, we cannot solve the climate change, because the city space covers only 2% of the entire Earth, but the greenhouse gases emissions from the cities amounts to 70% of the total emission of the greenhouse gases. And also, the issue of the plastic waste is the most urgent task of all mankind, and this can be solved by the circular economy system. And thirdly, the P4G is led by like-minded countries, composed of the 12 countries such as the Denmark, Netherlands, Ethiopia, South Africa, Kenya, and Korea, the Vietnam, Indonesia, and Colombia, and so on. And these countries focus on the supporting developing countries in response to the climate change, thereby playing the bridging role between developed and the developing countries. And the P4G has the organizational partners such as C40 cities and the GGGI and the World Resources Institute and the WEF, as well as the companies such as SK and Danfoss of Denmark. At the initial stage of project, the government has provided the fund to the project, and if it goes very well, it will be scaled up. And in the end, we will invite the companies to make investment. So our ultimate aim is to establish the sustainable business model. In short, the P4G has a bridging role between government public fund and the company's investment. These are reasons why the Korea has placed the higher value on P4G. Now let's look at the P4G Seoul Summit. It will be held from May 30 to 31st in Seoul, and it will take a virtual format as far as the summit session is concerned, and as far as the general session is concerned, it will be held in a hybrid format. And the theme of the P4G Seoul Summit will be inclusive green recovery towards carbon neutrality. And the programs are composed of leaders session and leaders live dialogue and thematic and green future sessions. Now let me elaborate on the theme of the P4G Seoul Summit. As I mentioned before, the theme is inclusive green recovery towards carbon neutrality. First, on inclusive. Inclusive means no one left behind. This means in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, it is extremely important to take special care of vulnerable countries as well as vulnerable people. Second, on the green recovery. We are facing the unprecedented crisis of pandemic-19, economic recession, and climate change. And in order to overcome this crisis, we need to give up our old habits and we need to build up our new habits, which is green. Indeed, the green growth is the new path for recovery in the context of the COVID-19. And finally, carbon neutrality. In short, we view that the short-term economic stimulus, the package, should be aligned with carbon neutrality. And furthermore, the summit also aims to be carbon neutral in all of the arrangements. And let's look at the P4G summit schedule. Before the summit, 10 green future sessions will be held. The Korean side will work out the preparations for the 10 issues such as green technology, the green finance, and ocean forestry, and so on. The first day of the P4G summit will have the opening ceremony as well as leaders session. And the second day of P4G will have the 5 thematic sessions with a particular emphasis on the food, water, and energy, cities, and circular economy. So after that, we will have the leaders' live dialogue. And then we are expected to adopt the Seoul Declaration as an outcome of P4G Seoul Summit, and we will have closing ceremony. And at the closing ceremony, we will invite the next summit host. Troika system will consist of the previous, the current, and the next summit host. And next summit host, so far it is confidential, but it is coming soon. Yeah? And we view that the Troika system is very valuable in terms of enhancing the global reliability of P4G and strengthening the operational sustainability of P4G. Last but not least, the Korean side, the Korean government will do everything possible on its part for the success of P4G, and I cordially request your support and concern for the successful P4G summit. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your informative remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will listen to the second keynote presentation from Director Ian de Cruz from the P4G. He will be delivering his views on the P4G partnership delivering inclusive and sustainable green growth as well as climate action. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much to the Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs for hosting this event. It is critical to bring businesses like Korean businesses at the heart of P4G as we look to be a global delivery mechanism for sustainable development and climate action. P4G itself is a partnership of 12 partner countries where Korea is hosting our summit with 5 international organizations. At our heart is developing a pipeline of partnerships where businesses are at the core of that agenda and where that impact can be scaled and replicated in our developing countries. So the P4G approach, what makes it unique is it's looking to bridge the gap between the development agenda and the investment agenda, looking for market-based solutions that we can scale and replicate and that are aligning with core national priorities and all the way to global agendas. And my colleague, Robin McGutten, Director of Partnerships, will speak specifically of how we look to co-create and co-invest with those partnerships with our Korean stakeholders. When you look at the ecosystem, we're looking at what can be done at the national level, how can that be scaled within the P4G ecosystem, and how it can align with the global agenda. An area where Korea and Korean businesses can really help us, for example, is in your own domestic push to be have the world's biggest offshore wind farm. How can you bring that expertise along with, for example, Denmark in its expertise in offshore wind and building energy islands to our global ecosystem in countries like South Africa, Mexico, and Indonesia, which are the heart of that energy transition and which are at the core of global climate change agendas, such as the COP26 event to be held in Glasgow in November. So 3 specific examples of partnerships where Korean corporates can be involved. The first one, Flawless, is a partnership looking to monetize food loss and waste solutions in Indonesia, Mexico, and South Africa. And we can really leverage Korea's leadership in food waste reduction and household waste reductions. And this also aligns with the Race to Zero targets in climate change of reducing 50 gigatons of carbon emissions through food and agriculture by 2030. The second one, zero emissions transportation. How do we accelerate the commercial deployment of electric buses in Latin America, in our partner countries in Colombia and Mexico, and bring Korea's expertise in automobile industries, battery swapping technology, and digitization to this as part of a Race to Zero target to find electric vehicles and to increase global bus sales in electric vehicles by 2025. And the final one, the Getting to Zero Coalition, it is looking to decarbonize the entire shipping chain and shift to zero emission ships where countries like Indonesia, Mexico, and South Africa can be at the heart of that transition. Korea, as one of the top construction builders of shipping buildings and ships, can really leverage that expertise and be a leader in this, as well as their investment in green hydrogen as a transition for this fuel supply chain. This aligns very well with goals for zero carbon fuels to represent 5% of shipping by 2030. So these three specific examples give you a taste of what the P4G Summit is for us. It is a major accelerator and moment for P4G partnerships and for Korean corporates to come together. It is a stepping stone to global agendas like COP26 Climate Change Conference, where countries and corporates can invest and implement in these transformative models for change, and where developing countries are at the heart of building back better and greener in this critical decade of action. We welcome you to co-create and co-invest with the P4G family. Thank you.
A very big thank you to our keynote speakers for their insights. It was a great opportunity to once again think about the importance of delivering inclusive and sustainable green growth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the panel discussion session on inclusive green public-private partnership and its path forward. I will now invite the moderator and panelists onto the stage. Our moderator today is President Chung Byung-gi from GTC. And the panelists are Director Mohamudu Tonkara of Governance, Strategy and Partnerships from GGGI, Director Oyun Sanjajurin from GCF, Vice President Park Jae-shin from KOICA, and Secretary General Cho Chung-le from ASEM SME's Eco Innovation Center. Please give them a warm welcome. President Chung, the floor is yours.
Okay, my name is Byung-ki Chung, the president of the GTC. I'm very happy to actually moderate this meaningful session. So before we start this session, let me briefly summarize the keynote speeches. Our Ambassador Yu actually presented a very nice introduction about P4G, its organization, mission, value it pursues, and P4G, as well as the P4G Summit, with the main theme of inclusive green recovery towards carbon neutrality, actually. And then Global Director Cruz of P4G actually explained how P4G contributed to the green recovery, especially with a particular emphasis on pioneering green partnerships. So with that, let's discuss, let's open our panel sessions. In fact, the inclusive partnership is not a new concept to us. OECD defines inclusive partnership as a partnership that encourages and respects distinctive roles of various parties for sustainable development. Then, what is the inclusive green partnership, which is the keyword of this panel session? Inclusive green partnership has been a core value of P4G, and P4G has been pioneering green partnerships to deliver inclusive and sustainable growth, building and accelerating multi-stakeholder partnerships among governments, businesses, investors, and civil societies. The upcoming P4G Summit is expected to serve as a special occasion for the international community, encouraging the participation and cooperation of leaders and the civilians to mobilize strong and consistent climate action for building back better and greener post-COVID-19 era. This Pre-P4G event held today aims to invite the public audience to think and explore together about inclusive green partnership in advance of the P4G South Summit, which will cover the theme titled Inclusive Green Recovery Towards Carbon Neutrality. So today, we are joined by distinguished guests from 4 different institutions to discuss on the topics of current status of inclusive public-private partnership and how it can further contribute to achieving green recovery and carbon neutrality, and how P4G can realize it. So with this background, I'd like to ask 2 questions to the panels. My first question is, building inclusive public-private partnerships has become a priority in international cooperation projects and green businesses. Then my question goes, what does your institution do to achieve green recovery and carbon neutrality? And how do you build inclusive public-private partnership in your activities? So can you start from Dr. Tunkara, yeah? And then proceed in the sitting order?
Thank you very much, President Chung, for this very important question and very timely. It's my pleasure to be in this panel today to share GGI perspective and also to learn from other organizations on this important topic. Let me first start with a couple of key principles. And the first one is leaving no one behind, which is a key principle about inclusiveness. But there is a second aspect, which is around the capacity gaps. So we talk a lot about finance gap, but sometimes we also have the capacity gap. For some of our audience who may not be familiar with GGI, GGI is the Global Green Growth Institute, is a member state organization established to support our members to transform their economy into a green growth model. But a green growth model that is inclusive, that is environmentally sustainable, but that also can help to create jobs. In this context of COVID-19 recovery, jobs is, when you ask government officials, what are your priorities, they will say, number 1 is job creation, number 2, job creation, number 3, job creation, because it's a key component. And the inclusiveness is a key component of achieving those priorities, realizing those priorities. So to the first part of your question, the inclusiveness is built into our delivery model as an organization. It's built into the strategy that we have in place. But there is an important aspect related to why this inclusiveness is important. Now, talking about public-private partnership, a few, I would say, important things to highlight will help us in this conversation. The first one is that there is a consensus that governments alone will not be able to address the issues that we are facing in terms of climate actions or climate ambitions. So the private sector is needed into accelerating the delivery of the ambitious climate actions. So that's number 1. Number 2, we also need to have business solutions that work and that will also attract investors. So one of the reasons why GGI has been putting a lot of effort into inclusive green growth is not only to have access to finance that will benefit only a limited number of the segments in the private sector, but to have it much more inclusive, from the smallholder farmers to the informal sector to the SMEs and SMIs. So there is a whole range of key stakeholders which play an important role. If you look at some of the LDCs or LLDC countries, the informal sector is a major part of the labor force. In many countries, the small and medium enterprises are the biggest employers. So what's happening, if I take, for example, the case of the renewable energy and energy efficiency, to give you a specific examples, DGGI works in three main areas. One is policy aspect, the second one is financing instrument, and the third one is helping to develop a pipeline of green bankable projects. Now, the policy part, which is the first item I mentioned, is important because the enabling environment is always going to help to accelerate the access of, or the implementation of the inclusiveness as part of the delivery of climate ambitions. So those policy actions are not only for enabling environments, creating enabling environment, but also the policy goals are meant to facilitate or accelerate access of the private sector into some segments of the economy where there are obstacles. Now, financing instruments, if I take one specific example, the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund is a mechanism that DGGI helped to establish in Senegal, just as an example. But what we noticed was that most of the large renewable energy investments were for big corporations or big companies. Then you have the SMEs or the small companies that were left out. So as an illustration of the inclusiveness, in collaboration with the government, we developed a mechanism where we look at the segments of the market that is of interest to the SMEs and the SMIs, and to develop the mechanism that they need. A second example, if I may add that, is around what type of business solutions are needed. When you look at many investors, quite often the issue is not about the availability of funding. The issue is around the quality of the project that they receive. So to make the access to the financing or the opportunities of financing, to make that available to the majority of stakeholders, helping them to develop quality projects is an important element that will also facilitate the process. So those are the two that I can say at this stage, and happy to elaborate further.
Thank you very much. And
it's
next.
on, right? Yes. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. First of all, I would like to congratulate Korea, of course, as Dr. Lee Hyo-sun said, being a leader in this very critical moment in history, and also P4G, championing P4G, because I think it's going to give a major impetus to the race that is very important now for net zero race. Mahamoudou mentioned finance. I represent Green Climate Fund, and Green Climate Fund is actually a financial mechanism of the Paris Agreement. Of course, our main role and function is to deliver climate finance to developing countries. And we all understand that increasing climate finance is key, but it's not just increasing the volume, it's also what type of finance, what type of assets we will be investing in, and innovation here is very key. It's innovation in financial instruments, and let me explain to you also on the example of blended finance and public-private partnership. I think by now everybody understands that without working with private sector, not only with private sector, government, private sector, civil society, every single citizen, unless it's a holistic and all of the society involvement, it will be very difficult to achieve the net zero. And if you look at some numbers, in OECD countries, there are about $18 trillion of negative yielding debt sitting in OECD countries. At the same time, if you look at developing countries, then it's estimated that the value of climate finance opportunities is, between now and 2030, is estimated to be about 23 trillion. So if you sort of logically or naturally, you would have thought that, there is a need for climate finance, and all the interesting and maybe very feasible climate projects are sitting in developing countries, and yet there are very zero, almost yielding capital sitting in OECD countries. So naturally, there will be flow from OECD countries to developing countries. And of course, we know that this is not happening. And this is because of the perceived risks. First of all, the green investments, especially in developing countries, require upfront capital investments, longer payback periods, and of course there are perceived policy, technical, and operational investment risks. So that's when organizations like Green Climate Fund come into the play. And I would say doesn't have to be only climate finance institutions like Green Climate Fund. All the development banks, national development banks, public development banks, but also multilateral development banks, World Banks, ADBs, and even public sector funding that goes into SMEs and private sector, especially with the COVID recovery. I would say that the change and revolution will happen if those scarce public funding can de-risk private sector investment. And of course, with blended finance, with public-private partnership, until recently, it's been very careful and also mostly, senior, not very risk-taking capital would go into this type of investments. But using an example of what GCF has been doing, and I think more and more financial organizations, especially public sector organizations, should be willing to take higher risk. And by this, I mean things like guarantees, first loss equity, some of the risks that will make private sector braver to go into different investments. It's not just the concessional debt, but it's also a combination of grants. And it's not just investing together with private sector, but also investing into policies, like Mohammed was saying, investing in capacity building, investing in de-risking regulations as well. And it has to become like a package investment. Let me just use one example of some of the projects that we recently funded by the Green Climate Fund. And of course, we work with partners, accredited entities. We have more than 103 accredited entities now, both international organizations, including KDB, but also, and then we had to see from KDB their pipeline of projects coming in. But then we also have direct access entities, which are national, starting from national development banks, but also even civil society organizations and government organizations. So 2 examples of how we have been de-risking PPP and blended and then private sector investment. Recently, we funded a project called Subnational Climate Fund Global, CNCF Global, and that's an equity project. And basically, with our accredited entity partner, Pegasus Capital Advisors, and we do have also private equity accredited entities as our partners as well. We've invested about 150 million in first loss equity investment in subnational projects. And it's in more than the project will go into more than 40 countries, and then many of them are seeds and LDCs. And you know that although there are a lot of climate solutions lie within the boundaries of subnational authorities, cities and regions, but at the same time, it's much more difficult for cities and regions to access international climate and other finance as well. So by providing the first loss equity, we can leverage up to $25, where if one scarce public dollar is invested, then equity private sector partners will come in with much more higher leverage ratio because we're taking the first loss. The other example, very quickly, for example, a project in Chile, in Tarapacá Desert. Basically, it's going to be a largest hydropower station using seawater. And it's a combination of 560 megawatt photovoltaic solar plant that provides power during the day and 300 megawatt pumped storage hydroelectric facility, which generates electricity at night and using Pacific Ocean. So seawater is pumped. And then, of course, there is also desalination, which provides fresh water to the local community as well. And because it's a combination of photovoltaic and water pump, then the variability is sorted out, so it's 24/7. And then the reason why, for example, again, it's our private sector is investing. MUFG Bank, Japanese, and then they are, of course, one of our accredited entities. So by investing 60 million from GCF, first loss equity, it makes, de-risk some of the initial investment, and that's why MUFG, but also other private investors can come in, and the total volume of the project is about 1 billion. So in order to move 1 billion, one has to come in with this public sector money to de-risk, but also it's not just the investment de-risking, but also we've been working, of course, on capacity building, and also, if needed in some of the projects, de-risking the regulatory, et cetera. So I think very important what Ian de Cruz was saying, if there are some certain solutions, certain pilots that were that worked well, in order to scale them up, one has to partner with the financial institutions, and I think there is much more appetite now for financial institutions to go into this type of deals and investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator, and thanks the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for hosting this event. I wish the upcoming P4G Seoul Summit is to be held in success. I think the term inclusive is repeatedly mentioned even today in the keynote speech and also by our GGJ colleague. The term inclusive can be used interchangeably with the phrase leaving no one behind. That means in the way of transforming our social and economic developments into a greener path, the inclusive green partnership requires us taking into consideration the gender perspective, the disabled, also other vulnerable groups of people. In that, what influence they may get as a result, and how we can design our climate action to let them voice, participate, and be beneficial. Such inclusive approach squarely corresponds to the spirit of SDGs and also development cooperation that KOICA pursues. As for the public-private partnership, 4 elements seems to be essential in my opinion. It's not academically well articulated, but in my opinion. Those are value proposition, financial resources, technology, and passion toward being green. Among these, the public sector has at least 2 elements, the value proposition and some level of financial resources. The international organizations, governments, and the development cooperation agencies like KOICA formulate policies, strategies, or plans to promote the greener development. In terms of resources, they provide ODA financing and some other official flows. Meanwhile, the private sector seems to have all of those 4 elements. In terms of value, CSOs or expert groups are active in advocating the necessity and urgency for great transformation toward a greener paradigm. In terms of resources, the impact investments or other private sector instruments that the public sector tries to mobilize under the notion of blended financing has a potential to overwhelm the volume of ODA or other official flows. In terms of technology, entrepreneurs in SMEs or startups work on all right through in order to develop innovative technological solutions that can resolve or at least mitigate the climate crisis. The passion of the civil activists or entrepreneurs is the engine for organizing all of these elements to make a step forward. Then why? Why should the public and the private meet or become partners while the private sector has all of those essential elements? I think it's because the public sector can play a crucial role in mobilizing what the private sector has, the entrepreneurship, technology, and financial resources. I'd like to share a partnership case that KOICA has initiated recently. In the Republic of Fiji, KOICA has developed an agro-photovoltaic program. As you know, the Fiji is one of the Pacific island countries that are most vulnerable to the climate change in the South Pacific region. its government set a goal of generating its electricity and power 100% in a clean way. In line with the Fiji's national goal, the agro-photovoltaic program aims to contribute to two objectives at the same time. First, clean energy development and therefore the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through the photovoltaic power generation. And second, the improvement of food security through the agricultural production in the power generation site. For this program, KOICA formed a partnership with several public and private entities. In specific, KOICA provides $8 million grants for microgrid stabilization, capacity building, climate adaptive plant cultivation, and market development. And GCF, colleagues see here, GCF provides $9 million in combination of loan and grants for the establishment of photovoltaic power generation plants, the establishment of climate change adaptive agricultural research station, and technical assistance to the relevant ministries of the Fiji government. Third, the Fiji Development Bank, which is an accredited implementation entity of GCF, as mentioned by GCF colleague now, also provides its own $1 million loan to the SPC, Specific Purpose Company, for this program. Finally, the fourth stakeholder, the private sector investor, invests $2 million as well as equity of that SPC. As a result, from the financial structure's point of view, this partnership is the case that combines the grant ODA, public loan, private equity investment, and even co-financing of the recipient country. Its beneficiaries include not only the government and its ordinary citizens, but also local community and farmers in need of economic support and self-reliance. It is inclusive and a public-private partnership-based initiative. To conclude, KOICA recognizes green as a key agenda for development cooperation of this COVID-19 pandemic era, and has a clear intention and specific plans to promote the Green New Deal ODA that will, we believe, contribute to the global green recovery and carbon neutrality. Thank you for now.
Okay, first of all, I'm very happy and proud that my country hosts this historical P4G Seoul Summit. I'm from ASEC. ASEC stands for ASEM SMEs Eco-Innovation Center. Let me introduce my center first. ASEC was officially endorsed at the 8th Asia-Europe meeting, so-called ASEM, in 2010 as an international initiative to support eco-innovation of SMEs in Asia and European countries. Since our establishment in 2011, we performed various projects for technological cooperation and spreading eco-innovation in ASEM region. Currently, we are doing many projects and programs such as a conference type, a working group to discuss multilateral cooperation in eco-innovation and green entrepreneurship for SMEs in the ASEM region. Also, supporting SMEs to adopt ESG and SDG strategy, as well as certified emission reduction credit through a clean development mechanism in Asian region. Also, operation of our Green Bean Center in Indonesia and Luxembourg to support the business incubation in both continents, Asia and Europe. In the upcoming P4G Seoul Summit, we are hosting a side event with the Korean Ministry of SMEs and Startup. We invite 60 SMEs and startups from 12 P4G membership countries. There will be an online exhibition and a IR pitching session for both a startup and investor. That event aims to attract global investment for promising green startup from each P4G member countries. Through this event, we hope to accelerate many green startups and help them find the investment that they need. I believe that those companies will be grown up in the near future and succeed to achieve the spirit and goal of P4G. In terms of inclusive green partnership between public and private sector, I'd like to focus on the private SMEs aspect. Let me include two questions. What does inclusive partnership mean for SME? And how can you include SMEs in this green transition process? According to the statistics, 99% of the world's enterprise are SMEs, and about 60% of employees are working in SME. Also in Korea, 83% of employees are working in SMEs. As we can see, SME have a large and wide impact on our economy and society. This is why we need to support SMEs and emphasize their role in green transition. Large corporations have a better understanding of green transition and respond well to this trend. Also, they have the resources to achieve this goal. With their better capabilities, corporations are actively participating in accomplishment of global goals such as carbon neutralization and SDGs. Since many SMEs are included in the global supply chain, they are also following the green transition trend, responding to the request of global suppliers or clients. For the green transition, SME have a strong point. For instance, SME have a fast decision-making process because of its simplest of governance structure. This enables SMEs to drive innovation and promote carbon neutralization more quickly and easily, I think. But reality is not so simple. Most SMEs lack the proper resources and capability to implement green transition. Also, it is not easy for them to change their business strategy for green solution. Furthermore, increased environmental regulations such as carbon tax and the technology trade barrier can be a green shock for SMEs. We need to notice that the global trend of green resilience can actually be a burden for smaller business. This is why SMEs need capacity building to build competence for green transition. As I mentioned before, ASEC is implementing a various programs to help SMEs increase their capacity in adopting green transition. However, our projects are not enough, I guess. We need to reach out to more SMEs and achieve a truly inclusive partnership that includes both goals, marketability and resilience that copes with green trend. What I'm trying to say today is that we need a systematic cooperation between SMEs and larger corporations in order to inclusively build the SMEs' green capacity. P4G Partnership Fund will be presented in the upcoming P4G Summit, has an important role in achieving the global goals. We're trying to match Korean startup to the P4G Partnership Fund. We will do a consulting work and cooperate with them to get some fund they need. It encourages innovative SMEs and also support the development of low-income economies. Again, I would like to emphasize the need for global support to promote inclusive green partnership that work for both large corporations and SMEs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The individual institutions actually shared with us their activities and experiences and perspectives in regards to building inclusive private-public partnership. Your activities may be different, but they appear to be orchestrated with a common instrument of the inclusive public-private partnership. Okay, with that statement, let me move to the second question. We face various changes, say, technologically, financially, socially, culturally, and so on, as we pursue green recovery and carbon neutrality and build inclusive public-private partnerships. In what ways do you think inclusive green partnership can help us achieve green recovery and carbon neutrality, and how P4G can accelerate it? Well, the fact is we are running out of time, so well, I would like to give you as much time as possible, but I can only give you, 2 to 3 minutes, so please understand that. Yeah. Can we start from the,
Okay.
the last, in the reverse order? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we are out of time, so I will not go in detail, but let me take one example that we are doing. We are supporting the Korean small enterprise, which has got a business in Asian area. We support them with consultancy in carbon neutralization and carbon reduction. As a result, we input about 10,000 US dollar to get a carbon credit of 20,000 per year. So it is very economical process. And SMEs, especially, they don't have much knowledge and experience, but we can connect them with consultancy, which has got an experience in CDM area, Clean Development Mechanism area. So we introduce them to a Korean small company, and then they adopt our concept, and they apply our program to get a carbon credit with a small money. So what I'm trying to say is that SMEs doesn't have information regarding carbon neutralization. So international institutions like ASEC can help them with a small money, with a small effort, but we can get a great result. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, to make it short, one of the distinctive features of P4G, as I understand, is that it tries to mobilize or utilize the innovative capability of the private sector. In that respect, I think the P4G can act as a bridge that connects developed donor partners, developing recipient partners, development cooperation agencies like KOICA, and also the businesses of the private sector. In addition to the utilization of the innovative technology in businesses, the P4G could also contribute in collaboration with the higher educational institutions of member countries to facilitate research, development, and innovation, and to strengthen the capabilities of researchers of the developing countries. We are talking about the public-private partnership in the sense that the green transition cannot be achieved only with the efforts of the government or the public sector, but considering the importance of science and technology, research, development, and innovation, we could indicate the partnership with the universities separately and distinctively. So could it be called as PPAP, the public, private, and academic partnership? Well, I discussed with this simple, but perhaps indicating a lot to the universities with my colleagues. Well, I just finished my talk raising the questions of PPAP.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, I think it's very important now, and then I think that's the P4G's main theme is also how do we leverage green recovery into this big movement towards net carbon neutrality, right? Yesterday I was looking at a report which was looking at the, all the stimulus measures, and unfortunately the numbers are not very good. 14 trillion US dollars were announced in the world's largest 50 countries last year in 2020 for recovery measures, COVID recovery. So it's a huge, unprecedented pandemic actually freed unprecedented amount of money, right? 14 trillion. At the same time, out of those 14 trillion, only 13%, 1.9 trillion, was directed to so-called long-term recovery type of measures, right? Everything, we do have, short-term cash and support, and then, which is also important, but then only 13% for long-term recovery. And less than 20% of this 13%, 340 billion, and I just calculate maybe just over 2% of all this is gone to green recovery measures. So very little, unfortunately, is going to green recovery measures. So to your question, for example, what GCF has been doing, first of all, we've been announcing what's called rapid readiness. So we're asking countries to come with proposals to receive grants for readiness that will help countries to craft green resilient recovery measures. So recently we have an application from about 24 of countries that are, especially in developing countries, it's very important to craft green resilient recovery measures, right? Also from the same report, it's shown that only in mostly the green recovery measures are not sufficient, and then most of them are in OECD countries again. The other thing is innovation. I spoke about innovation in financial instruments, but I think innovation in policy and regulatory environment is very, very important. So this transformative planning and in institutions. So for example, what we've been doing is trying to support incorporating both SDG, climate NDCs, COVID-related recovery measures and investment. If you incorporate and look at this planning a bit more holistically, and then incorporating such measures and NDCs, then one can apparently, there were about another study that one can reduce total required investment by up to 40%. If you sort of more holistically and transformatively plan, right? You can't just plan SDGs separately, NDCs and COVID measures. So I think that's very, very important. And I wanted to use the opportunity and thank also Korean government for supporting developing countries, because everybody heard about Korea, championing net zero, and then of course congratulating. But at the same time, I think not all know that not only through KOICA, but also through GCF, for example, and then Korea being a great, also not only contributor, because Korea doubled its contributions to GCF last time during the replenishment of GCF, but also by hosting GCF, Korea is actually contributing to more than 140 countries, developing countries around the world in climate action, because out of our $30 billion portfolio of projects that we have in more than 120 countries now and 140 in readiness, and GCF's investment is about 8.3 billion, and then certain percentage of that comes from Korean government. And just by hosting, I think Korea has been contributing greatly, not only to championing Korea's net zero, but also increasing ambition in all those developing countries, which is very, very important. Thank you.
I think I will focus on two aspects. The first one is over the past 5 years, GGGI has been supporting members and countries to mobilize green investment of more than $2 billion over the past 5 years. And those $2 billion, out of those $2 billion, 41% came from the private sector. And in 2020 alone, over 68% of the green investment mobilized came from the private sector. So there are two reasons to that. One is building the finance gap through solutions, business solutions that work. But the second one is around the inclusiveness and building the capacity gap. Now, there are two, I would say, aspects linked to the second question the moderator raised, which is that investing for scaling up is important, and knowledge sharing for scaling up is important. What it means is that we should not be spending a lot of effort and a lot of funding on doing a lot of projects like if you are doing for the first time. So knowledge sharing is important in that sense because we need to be scaling up. We need to accelerate that scaling up. And the replication will help to also reduce the cost. That's number one. Number two is around building synergy. So P4G is in a space where it's addressing green growth issues around the 5 SDGs. And there are other organizations like GGGI partnering with P4G. So building that synergy or strengthening the synergy and the complementarity is going to help us to maximize the impact of the limited resources that we have. And the last one that I would like to add here is that investors are looking for quality projects, not the quantity, but quality project. And there is a strong, I think, role that both P4G and our own organization can play by building the synergy in developing quality projects that investors will be interested in, and mostly accompanying the key players like the SMEs that were mentioned because they represent a major aspect of the workforce. The last one I want to emphasize here is that over the last 12 months, GGGI has been supporting about 13 countries in greening their recovery plans, the COVID recovery plans, and developing Green New Deals. So, as well as the nationally determined contribution NDCs for climate actions. So those present opportunities to actually build the inclusiveness in the planning of those key initiatives so that we can maximize the impact of our resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your inspiring discussions, leaving us with a consensus that P4G can be indeed a valuable platform to boost inclusive green partnership that is necessary for achieving green recovery and carbon neutrality. I hope the panel discussion today served as a nice prelude for the public audiences to anticipate more in the upcoming P4G Summit. I'd like to thank once again all the panelists for sharing their distinguished experiences and expertise, and every online participant for their attention. With this closing statement, goodbye for now, and see you at the summit. It is wonderful that you allow me to stay on the schedule at this closing statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator and panelists. Thank you for your insightful and informative discussions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the presentations, we have prepared a short video clip. Please enjoy. Did you enjoy the video on P4G partnerships? In this session, presenters are going to share 5 examples of how Korean organizations are engaging in P4G partnerships, focusing on 4 of the 5 main SDG areas: food and agriculture, water, energy, and cities. Now, I would like to invite the presenters up to the stage. Today, we are joined by Director An Byung-gi from Korea Forest Service, CEO Cha Sang-hun from WePlat, CEO Jang Sung-eun from Yok, Director Kang Sung-gil from Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering, and Director Chun Do-gu from the GTC. Our first presenter is Director An Byung-gi from Korea Forest Service. He'll be presenting on the P4G partnership of agroforestry for people, prosperity, and peace. Please welcome Director An.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Byung-gi An. I'm the Director of International Cooperation Division, Korea Forest Service. Today, I'm going to introduce our Ethiopian project. And this project belongs to SDG number 2. That is food and agriculture. Probably most of the audience in this room drank a cup of coffee this morning. Maybe drank a cup of coffee right before this event. When you look at this video panel, in fact, the coffee tree, even you cannot see that because coffee tree is, in fact, that's a small tree, as high as just 3 meters. And in nature, the coffee tree is supposed to be grown with other variety of trees. That's the natural circumstance. But becoming the industrialized the regime, we are growing the coffee tree as that's plantation. We are raising the coffee tree monoculture. So, in fact, there was the beginning of deforestation, and there was the beginning of agriculture. But sometimes it makes the problem. So let's find out our solution. So our project, named Agroforestry for People, Peace and Prosperity, we're going to implement this project in southern Ethiopia. And we have our 6 partners. 3 partners from Korea and 3 partners from Ethiopia. First one is Korea Forest Service, and second one is SK Forest. Korean company, they are good at the ecosystem restoration. So they will be taking care of the forest restoration. And third one is Tree Planet. They are familiar with crowdfunding and promotion and marketing of coffee in the premium market in Korea and other countries. And you have 3 more partners from Ethiopia and international organization. First one is GGGI. So GGGI Ethiopian office will be taking care of the implementation of this project. And EFCCC, they will be taking care of the land and land tenure and capacity building. And ECFF, they are good at the shade-grown coffee. That's traditional, natural, and organic method of growing the coffee. So you're going to start this project from this year, and total budget is about $1.7 million US, and it will be continuing for 3 years until 2023. I'm not sure whether the people know this one or not. Our coffee originates from the Ethiopia, the Arabica coffee. So our project site is located in southern Ethiopia. In fact, there was a very famous area for growing the coffee. But nowadays, it is getting drier, and that's why we are trying to provide the water and electricity for this area. And coffee means not only just the agricultural commodity. It is more than the ordinary commodity. Treating the coffee is welcoming the people and neighbors and providing their special hospitality. That's the meaning of the coffee in Ethiopia.
And Ethiopia coffee, for example, Yegachefu is a very famous specialty coffee in Korea. So it has a lot of potential. In 2019, at that time, there was the first African head, His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has visited Korea, August, and at that time there was the summit between Ethiopia and Korea. In fact, these two leaders had a very strong consensus because these two leaders were really interested in peace, and Ethiopia made the peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And as I mentioned, Ethiopia is a very vulnerable country to the climate change. So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is doing the 4 billion tree planting, the entire national campaign. And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed became the Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2019. At that time, he said, for him, nurturing peace is just like the planting tree and growing tree. It means it takes a lot of time, energy for communication and trust building, but it works. And my President Moon also said, forest cooperation will be a driving force behind the promotion of peace. And that was the hidden vision and strategy of the Peace Forest Initiative. That was the global initiative made by Korean government. It is the main concept of our project in Ethiopia. So you're going to make the forest ecosystem restoration. And in the middle of that area, you're going to make the coffee farm. That's not plantation. So we'll be handling our coffee farm as a traditional, natural, organic way. And you're going to provide the water and electricity by photovoltaic power station. So in Ethiopia is the only country they are maintaining such the traditional shade-grown coffee. And this shade-grown coffee is one of the alternative solutions to replacing the plantation agriculture. So the January 2020, right before the COVID-19 pandemic, the Minister of Korea Forest Service has made the courtesy visit to Her Excellency Sahle Wokjeude. And last week, we had the very special chance to invite our Ethiopian partner to GGGI, and we had the workshop. Next week, May 18th, there will be a special session on forest. At that time, there will be a keynote speech from Her Excellency, President of Ethiopia. And it will be the beginning of our special session on forest. So please be interested in this meaningful event next week. It's the quotation of the Dr. Wangari Maathai. When you plant a tree, we plant the seed of peace and seed of hope. That is the vision of our project in Ethiopia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for your informative presentation. Our next speaker is CEO Cha Sang-hun from WePlat. Please welcome Mr. Cha.
Good afternoon, P4G families. It's my pleasure to be here. Today, I'm going to introduce one of the meaningful P4G partnership, named the Intelligent Water Leakage Management Platform. I'm Sang-hun Cha, CEO of WePlat. Let me start introducing the innovative technology first. We have very long pipeline on the ground, even in South Korea, which can rotate 5.5 tons of the earth. For detecting the water leaking point of the long pipeline, we have to rely on the experience of professional water leak detectors. Some countries which have no this type of professional water detectors, they have to stop the supplying clean water when they face severe drought caused by the climate change. sometimes the water leak make a big risk for the city. And we have to waste about $40 billion every year in the world because of a water leak. Why it's so difficult to manage water leak? For a successful water leakage management, we need the system, engineering, devices. What it means? It means we need a very huge finance and a long time. So how we partnership approach to solve this problem? At first, we integrated 3 or 4 existing software into the cloud-based software. Second, we reduced the engineering cost using AI and big data analysis technology. And then we called this intelligent water leakage management platform. And we also developed a smartphone-based IoT device to connect this system with the client around the world. This is the intelligent water leakage management system. Let me show you how it works. The client just collects water leak sound with a smartphone and this small device and send the sound data to the cloud server. And then our knowledge system analyzes the sound data and shows the water leak point on the map. So it means you are in any country and any place. If you have a smartphone on your hand, now you can be a professional water leak detectors. This technology has been verified in many places in South Korea since last year. This is one of the examples, the outcome of this pilot project in South Korea. And now in South Korea, just 3 or 4 local women are collecting water leak sound and detecting the water leak point with our technology. So we are creating local jobs. If the developing country save the water from the water leak reduction, they can get a very huge benefit because they don't have to build additional water treatment plant. So they can save a cost for construction and the human resource and the maintenance management cost, also power consumption. So therefore, we choose the Vietnam, which are suffering from the water scarcity because of a very rapid economic growth as a target countries for P4G partnership. And Binh Duan province has been selected as the first pilot city for the P4G partnership. And 5 partners have joined for P4G partnership of an intelligent water leakage management platform. The Vietnam side, 3, and the Korean side, 2. And we will supply the smart devices and the nano software. Also, we will supply the capacity building and the consulting through the P4G partnership. Now we are planning to do pilot project with a pilot site with a 5 steps. But all of these projects will be proceeded via online. This is the target goal. It is expected after the pilot projects, the pilot site will get benefits as much as the 685,000 cubic meter per year, the water saving, and a job creation. Also, the carbon dioxide reduction. And 3 more pilot projects has been launched with the help of the advertisement effect of a P4G partnership. This is our mission. We are focusing on bridging water service gap between developed country and a developing country with the disruptive technology. Thank you for P4G.
Thank you for your insightful speech, Mr. Cha. Moving on, I would like to introduce our next speaker, CEO Jang Sung-eun from Yo.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jang Sung-eun, the founder of Yoke. It's my pleasure to be part of P4G Summit here today. President Moon Jae-in's remark about the need for every nation to come together to address poverty and inequality in developing countries, as well as the possibility of combating climate change through these efforts, demonstrates that environmental issues are global problems that transcend the national borders. Solar Cow by Yoke provides the energy to children in vulnerable communities in Africa, reducing the use of fossil fuels and improving access to education. It's an innovation that tackles two problems at the same time, has been recognized in several international platforms. Let's take a look at Solar Cow through a short clip.
With the solar milk batteries, my friends go to school where the solar cow waits for them. They plug their batteries into the solar cow. While they wait for the solar cow to charge the batteries, they can take classes and also have fun with their friends. After school, they can go home with fully charged batteries to power lights and cell phones. Thanks to Solar Cow, the house is now bright at night. Also, they no longer need to go to charging shops far from home. The solar milk batteries provide incentive for parents to send their kids to school. So my friends and their parents can all be happy.
For the implementation, we work with a local NGO, the Energy for Impact. However, not that long after starting the P4G project in Kenya, schools closed due to the COVID-19, posing a substantial challenge in project operation. Then, a new opportunity arose when we learned that insufficient electrification was an obstacle for many international agencies in implementing remote learning through radios. Yoke immediately developed a new version of Solar Cow with the radio features and provided a means to encourage remote learning, as well as distribute energy. Furthermore, in the case of limited mobility due to COVID-19, Yoke ensures that families can still be supplied with energy through individual solar panels at home without coming to school, as long as they allow and encourage their children listen to the educational contents through the Solar Cow. It means we can control the access after monitoring their usage of the radio. I believe that this can be a great solution in education during the prolonged pandemic. It is interesting that Solar Cow meets many elements of ESG. To date, Yoke has reached around 4,000 students with Solar Cow, and we aim to reach 125,000 students by 2023, and reduce 20,000 tons of carbon emissions. The Solar Cow project embodies the message that no one left behind, and it will only be able to create a true impact through the participation of citizens and the cooperation of international organizations and governments that realize this global issue is our own problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jang, for your insights. Now I would like to invite our next speaker, Director Kang Sung-gil from CRISO.
Good afternoon. I'm Sung-gil Kang, working at CRISO, National Institute, dealing with that shipbuilding and maritime engineering. But my English is not so good, so I wanted to speak in Korean. Please use the translator for the English the people. 안녕하십니까. 선박해양플랜트 연구소 연구전략부장 강성길입니다.
Hello everyone, I am Song-gil Kang, General Manager at the Korean Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering. First, it is an honor for me to be invited to this event being held to address climate change issues despite the difficulties caused by the pandemic. I will be introducing greenhouse gas reduction efforts in international shipping as part of Getting to Zero coalition activities. The world is striving to achieve sustainable development and overcome the climate crisis, and international shipping is no exception in these endeavors.
2에서 3%의 좀 비교적 낮은 배출 양을 가지고
For your
있지만
reference, international shipping only accounts for 2 to 3% of worldwide GHG emissions. However, international shipping amounts to 90% of international logistics. Thus, 50% reduction of GHS may have a great direct and indirect impact on global industries and economy and trade.
이에 지난 유엔의 해양 국제 해사 기구 (International Maritime Organization은)
the United Nations IMO in 2018
국제 해운 분야 온실가스
set a
감축량을
target of reducing greenhouse gases in international shipping by 50% from 2008 levels by 2050 in order to address global climate change. Various measures to achieve this target are being discussed with its member states.
에너지 효율이 좋은 그 선박을 활용할 필요도 있고 이러한 목표를 달성하기
For the
위해서는
short
기존
term,
선박들의 운항
to
속도를 조정해서
achieve this
탄소
target,
배출량을
we
저감할
can
필요가 있습니다.
increase
국제기구
energy
IMO에서는
efficiency
이미
and
국제
also
사각을
control
변경하여
operation speeds to
2020년부터
reduce
2008년
emissions.
대비 에너지 이용 효율을 20% 이상을
To improve vessel energy efficiency, IMO has adopted the Energy Efficiency Design Index for new builds and has mandated that newly built vessels must improve their efficiency levels by 20% from 2008 levels by 2020 and 30% by 2025. Further improvements of 40% by 2030 is being discussed. Once a vessel is built, it is in operation for 20 to 40 years. So in addition to these new builds, existing ships have to improve their efficiency by reducing their speed or by carrying out efficiency improvement measures. And so IMO is also having discussions and setting up plans to improve the efficiency of existing ships by more than 20% by 2023. However, energy efficiency improvements and speed and reductions alone will not be enough to reach the targets of 50% reduction by 2050. Therefore, non-bunker sea fuel vessels powered by low carbon fuels such as LNG will have to be increased, and zero emissions vessels based on zero emission fuels like hydrogen and ammonia will have to be rolled out.
개발하여 보급할 필요가 있습니다.
And so these types of zero-emission vessels need to be rolled out. And in adopting and also commercializing these zero-emission vessels, there are many barriers in the market to technology development, institutions, regulations, and systems. And so to increase the usage of zero-emission vessels, global shipping industry and stakeholders have partnered together to commercialize these zero-emission vessels, and during the United Nations Climate Action Summit held in September of 2019, Global Maritime Forum and World Economic Forum Friends of Oceans have initiated the launch of the Getting to Zero Coalition Partnership. Thus far, 175 companies from 140 countries in the field of shipping, class, energy, shipbuilding, research, and etc. have participated with the goal of carrying out activities to establish policies and institutions, develop technology for commercialization, and facilitate information sharing and international cooperation to operate these zero-emission vessels by 2030. As you are well aware, Korea has the first, second, and third leading shipbuilding companies, and we also also have leading shipping companies. And so, based on such leading technology, the Korean government is a strong supporter and also participant of the Getting to Zero Coalition. In particular, during the P4G summit, there will be a special session on maritime affairs in order to discuss the strategy for realizing such targets. And various organizations and countries will be participating in these sessions to set up plans to roll out such zero-emission vessels. And for the success of such systems to be realized, there has to be a lot of cooperation, in particular among governments, central governments and ministries, central governments and local governments, public and private sector, and civil society need to all work together and participate with interest in this area. Furthermore, technology innovation is required. Our organization, in order to realize such visions, is participating actively in these efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for your presentation. Now we have our last speaker ready with us, Director Chun Deok-woo from GTC. Director Chun, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, so I'm Deok-woo Chun, Director at the Green Technology Center. I'm very glad to present on our P4G startup partnership, which explores the IoT solution for Mekong Delta area to have better climate resilience and green economy. My presentation will go over this order. The Mekong Delta region in Vietnam is highly vulnerable to climate change. The Mekong Delta region suffers from frequent floods and drought, which seriously damage water security. This issue is stressing the lives of the local residents in the agriculture and the fishing industry, which are the critical basis of the region's economy. One of the most effective ways to minimize the negative effects of the climate-driven disasters is to establish the disaster risk management system using ICT, which is very well proven in several countries. But while we have surveyed the issue and needs in this area, we found that they need not only the flood risk management system, but also clean water supply management system. When we found this new niche, actually it's quite to make us very embarrassing, and we hesitate to respond to this new niche, because this means we have to enlarge our scope of our work and also design more complex partnership. But we have discussed with several decision makers in Vietnam, and we decided to embrace this new need in our scope. For this project, we have 4 activities: needs assessment, pre-FS study, and business model development, and partnership expansion. Actually, this 4th activity is very unique and important for us, because with this activity, actually we were able to respond to our new funding and new needs. If we think that the flow, when we started this project, P4G's approach helped us to understand these issues not just as technical ones, but also social and economic ones. If we think that the flood is just a natural and physical issue and technical solution can solve this problem all, you may miss a very critical one. It is people. We found that there are various types and huge numbers of people who depend on the waters in the Mekong Delta area. Moreover, their water-depending figures and dynamics highly diverse. The strong emphasis of the P4G on the inclusive partnership led us not to miss embracing these various stakeholders to develop more realistic and effective solution for this area. We conduct these activities with these partners. Our initial partnership had 4 agencies among Denmark, Korea, and Vietnam. then the scale of our partnership have been rising up, having 3 more major partners, such as the Korea Rural Community Corporation, International Organization for Migration, and the Southern Institute of Water Resource Research. All of these new partners have been actively contributing to find more holistic solutions with us. Especially, IOM plays a critical role as interface, contacting various decision makers and normal residents to dig up the real niche found in the daily lives of the people. So I would like to emphasize 2 lessons. First, technology commercialization with PPP. Its first step should be on in-depth niche assessments, which is only possible with inclusive partnership. In fact, green growth competes with gray growth and thus demands society to change their previous customs and systems, which impacts many people. So green growth development commonly involves a variety of stakeholders. This is why we need inclusive partnership to scale up the green solution. Inclusive PPP approach helps have better niche assessment, of course, but also provide us with shared risk management, creation of the common interest, co-financing, and optimal solution as well. The second lesson is not to avoid the new finding, new niche, and new partnership during the P4G partnership program, but proactively embrace and use them as a new opportunity of scalability and sustainability. If we have these positive thinkings, you can also use any barriers, even the COVID-19, as a new chance to introduce the greener and more fundamental solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, for your presentation. Once again, I would like to thank all the presenters for their insightful and informative presentations. It is very encouraging to see Korean organizations actively taking part in P4G partnerships. Moving on, for those who are interested in participating in the P4G partnerships, we have prepared an application procedure presentation of the P4G presentation call, and this will be presented by Robin Meckin, Director of Partnership from the P4G.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on the 2021 call for P4G partnerships. My name is Robin McGuckin. I am the Director of Partnerships for P4G, and it's my pleasure to be here today to speak to you about this. I'd like to start by thanking all of our esteemed members who have joined, Ambassador Yu, the P4G board members, and all the others who have joined this webinar as P4G supporters and prospective applicants. I hope this presentation helps to answer your questions. So I'm going to specifically go over the 2021 selection process. And I want to start this by emphasizing the type of support that P4G provides to our partnerships. This is very important because our partnerships need to understand that the catalytic funding, our funding, is just one piece of the overall support package that P4G provides. We also do co-creation and co-investment with our partnerships. We provide advisory services and strategic leadership services for our partnerships. We help our partnerships to engage with investors and policymakers in their sector and country of implementation. We also work with the partnerships on their governance structure to ensure that the partnership is cohesive and can move forward towards their goal. We do a lot of work around global recognition. And then finally, and most importantly, very importantly, is our learning and knowledge sharing, because we want to make sure that our partnerships are replicable and scalable as we look to solve the global SDGs. We have 6 eligibility criteria. All partnerships that advance in the P4G process must meet all 6 of these eligibility criteria. The first is around SDG impact. P4G is actually focused on 6 SDGs. SDG 2 around zero hunger, SDG 6 around clean water and sanitation, SDG 7 around clean and renewable energy access, 11 around sustainable cities, and 12 on circular economy. All of our partnerships, the second criteria, all of our partnerships must be in the startup or scale-up phase. They cannot be in the research or early idea stage. The country focus, our partnership activities must be implemented in one of our ODA eligible countries that Ian covered. The partners, the partnership must include at least one commercial for-profit entity and one non-commercial, non-governmental, non-profit entity. And we also ask that there is government buy-in or acknowledgement of the partnership. Fifth, the partnership must be innovative. We are looking for new solutions that will dramatically accelerate progress towards accomplishing the SDGs. And so we are looking for game changers in this sector. And then finally, and very importantly, there must be a clear path to commercial viability. This means that the partnership must present a clear business plan that shows that ultimately they will become commercially viable. This gets us into our evaluation criteria. We have 7 evaluation criteria. The first is on the business plan. We ask each partnership in the first stage of their application, the concept note, to submit a business plan draft, and then in the final proposal stage to submit a full business plan. That business plan must show how the partnership will achieve financial sustainability, how they will become for-profit and stop being grant dependent. The partnership second must demonstrate a clear market understanding. The partnership must understand the market in which they are implementing and the market fundamentals within that market. Third, the SDG impact must be there, not only aligned with our 5 SDGs, but to have a very ambitious, transformative set of objectives, goals, and impact in those SDGs, or one at least of those SDGs. Fourth, the partnership must be aligned with P4G's relevant national priorities. This means the priorities of our eligible member countries and our network and non-financial support. The team, fifth, must have really solid leadership and experience. We need teams that are able to deliver results on the ground and to overcome the inevitable challenges that come about when you're trying to do something transformative, new, or innovative. In the final proposal stage, our partnerships will need to comply with evaluation criteria for 6 and 7, where they will have to submit a work plan and goals, and they will have to submit a risk matrix, and we will evaluate them on that. This slide gets to the different steps in the selection process. The call for partnerships officially opened on April 2nd. That means that concept notes, which is really a 2-page concept with a up to 2-page business plan summary or draft, can be submitted at any time until July 31st. We encourage everyone to submit their concept notes early, because once we then go through step 2, screening and evaluation, we will then begin reviewing the partnership. Any partnerships that advance, we will ask for a draft proposal. And then step 4, we will go into co-creation mode. This means we will hold a number of calls with the partnerships that advance to this stage and begin co-creating with them before we reach step 5, which is where they give their pitch and final proposal. Then we go into step 6, final evaluation, and step 7, approval. Very important to note here that we typically receive a high number of concept notes, and typically only 1/3 or less actually make it through step 2, screening and evaluation. We score at step 2, screening and evaluation, and we bring in independent external advisors who are experts in each sector and country of implementation. And we score again in the step 6, final evaluation step. And then finally, step 7, We submit recommendations to our executive committee, and after consultations, the executive committee approves the final partnerships for funding. Now I'm going to present some very important tips and examples for success. Our most successful partnerships start with a solid business plan. These partnerships have a plan to become financially sustainable. They also have extremely resilient, innovative, and entrepreneurial leaders who are doers on the ground, who are willing to stick with it and do what it takes to get the partnership to be successful. Because all of our partnerships are innovative and looking at new and transformative ideas, they typically involve blended finance approaches. These partnerships must be headed towards exiting from needing grants, but we recognize that they may not be ready for fully commercial finance and may need some sort of blended concessional finance. And then finally, our partnerships really understand the market fundamentals. They understand that enabling environment in their country. So what do our commercial partners look like? Our successful commercial partners are typically on the ground, already implementing in the relevant country. They are, second, a for-profit entity looking to deploy a commercially proven technology or solution set. And this is key. They are doing so through an innovative for-profit business model. Finally, it is a company that intends to take that business model and launch it or put it forward as a for-profit business model and look for the level of investment to make that happen. On the right-hand side, the commercial partner is not looking for traditional ODA-based grant activities. They're not looking for technical assistance. They're not looking for equipment purchase subsidy, community development, etc. While these are important activities, they are not what P4G is about. P4G is about market transformation. They are also not looking for traditional core business development or expansion of a core business product. They are looking at fundamentally new business models, fundamentally new ways of doing business. They are also not focused on research and development or other early stage product development. For our non-governmental, non-commercial civil society partners, the list is similar, but slightly different. On the left-hand side, our NGO partner is also on the ground implementing for commercial results. We also want to see NGOs who actively embrace advancing commercially viable for-profit business models. These partners recognize that ODA funding and government funding are not sufficient in order to solve the social and environmental challenges of the SDGs. And very importantly, the NGO is a partner that provides local, on-the-ground credibility, legitimacy, and proven methodologies for measuring environmental and social impact. Similar to the for-profit entity, the NGO is not an entity which wants to use the funding for traditional ODA-based grant activities. They also, second, do not want to remain grant dependent, and also very importantly are not, third and finally, focused on academic research, R&D, or other early stage development. So I thought I'd conclude with an example. This example is a project, a partnership that is really delivering market transformation on the ground. It is the Sustainable Special Economic Zones, delivering sustainable industrial clusters in Nigeria, Kenya, and expanding to other countries in Africa and Asia. So you see on the left-hand side, P4G basic criteria for what makes a successful partnership. They have to embrace P4G's financial advisory and acceleration support with P4G as a catalyst, moving over to the right. They have to have, next square down, on the left, national priority alignment. They must be aligned with that implementing country's priorities. And this partnership you see on the right is aligned with Kenya's green manufacturing ambitions, which is one of their big 4 agenda points. On the left, in the next box down, the partnership must set ambitious SDG-related targets. And you can see on the right, in the third box down, that this partnership has targeted US $500 million in investment, 10,000 jobs, and 30 megawatts of clean energy. And right now they are looking at about 170 million worth of financial commitments, so they're well along in their path towards meeting these goals. They must be looking forth at financial sustainability, going down to the next box. And if you see on the right, this partnership has actually spun off a project development entity called SAVO that will be looking at how to replicate this model in other countries. And then finally, that leads us into their partnership's ability and intention to replicate and scale. We want to see models that can be replicated and scaled across the world to meet the global SDGs and can provide key examples on how transformative impact can be accomplished on the ground. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact myself or one of my colleagues listed here. And thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and your energy and look forward to seeing your proposals. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Director, for the informative presentation. We look forward to seeing more organizations and individuals participating in the P4G partnership to build more inclusive and impactful green partnerships. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will invite Dr. Lee Soo-kyung from GTC up onto the stage for the Q&A session. Good afternoon, Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, I believe that we have received several questions in advance, and the questions are in my hands right now, and I'll be reading them to you so that you can respond to the questions.
Yes.
So the first question is, since it is difficult for local companies to find appropriate partners abroad, can the P4G recommend partners in another country for companies that wish to apply for the program?
Yes, P4G can recommend for strong proposal concept, as you already learned from the Robin's presentation just right before. P4G Hub, as a secretariat of the partnership, strongly prefer that private sector companies have on-the-ground experience and relationships in the country of the implementation for the sustainability and the success of the activities.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Moving on to the next question. Are there possible ways of making self-contributions of P4G funding? Is there any minimum ratio of investment that can be made in self-contributions?
Yes, actually, P4G strongly prefers cash contribution for the cost share with the partner groups. Some in kind is also allowed, but P4G has not a set specific ratio of cash to in kind. Just for example of my project, which is the IoT Mekong, for Mekong Delta project, is also contributed by the partner groups in cash and also the in-kind contribution. So don't worry about it, the ratio of the exact number of the cash flows. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Moving on to the next question. Who will be assigned as the P4G advisor during the partnership selection process?
Just on behalf of the P4G Secretariat, I just shared this information to the people who really wanted to apply for the P4G partnerships. A P4G advisor will be assigned for each partnership based on the specific sector and geography of each, which will be aligned with the expertise of the P4G staff.
Thank you, Doctor. Moving on to our last question. How long will it take to be selected as finalists to receive the P4G Partnerships Fund? Can you give a detailed timeline of the process?
Yes, I have. Actually, I got information from the P4G Hub, but already I assume that people already recognize that the presentation by Robin, that there is a lot of and a long story and a long process of the P4G partnership approval. So it means that 2 to 5 months is casually need to take. But however, regardless of the timeliness, Timeline for co-creation, all finalist award for 2021 will be decided in December by the P4G Executive Committee and will be notified no later than the end of December. So don't worry about it. And then please prepare the concept proposal and then get approval from the P4G Secretariat. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the detailed answers, Dr. Lee. Due to time constraints, I'm afraid we will have to end the Q&A session here. If you have any more questions related to the P4G partnership call, please feel free to contact the P4G Hub. Thank you everyone for being with us today on and offline. I believe that this is an all the more timely and meaningful event and a way to kick off the upcoming 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming summit. Thank you.